Russia is known not to bend in front of anyone, and has proven this yet again by disagreeing with the oil price cap of $60 per barrel by the EU. In response to Moscow's invasion of Ukraine, the EU unveiled its plans for enforcing a price cap on Russian oil exports after months of deliberation. So how is this going to impact the US and Europe? Is this going to be the end of the Russian-Ukraine war? What step has Russia taken in retaliation? Watch this video till the end to know what the catch is here. Like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon to always stay updated about the world news. After months of discussions, the EU has unveiled its plans for enforcing a price cap on Russian oil exports in response to Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. Attempts have been made by the US and the EU officials to persuade nations like India, China, and Turkey to join the coalition or at the very least support the price cap, which they claim is in the best interests of all nations that purchase Russian oil, because it will give them leverage to negotiate lower purchase prices. The potential price cap was subsequently set by the US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen at $60 per barrel. However, if you think this could lead to a decline in Russian oil exports and a reduction in the Kremlin's ability to fund its genocidal campaign to annex Ukraine, you are likely to be dissatisfied. The European Union's price cap, which was swiftly endorsed by the United States, the G7, and Australia, is not audacious enough to materially affect Russian revenues or obstruct the progress of the war. The EU described in detail how it intends to impose the price cap in its 8th sanctions package, released on October 6th after having already closed its ports to Russian ships. Any ship transporting Russian crude oil, and in 3 months, Russian oil products, that is sold above the price cap would not be permitted to use any European suppliers for insurance, financing, servicing, or bunkering. The $60 per barrel price, cited by the US Treasury, is 20% less than what the Russian crude has been recently selling for, but it is closer to the upper end of the price range in recent years. Even after accounting for inflation, the value is still relatively generous, at least for the time being. Ironically, market prices may approach or even drop below this benchmark if the global economy experiences a recession, which is highly likely. However, for Russia, it is more crucial to maintain complete control over its own oil exports than it is merely to maintain its current cash flow. Recent missile attacks against Ukrainian water supplies, energy infrastructure, and other civilian targets by Russian President Vladimir Putin should have been met with equally oppressive price cap. Putin won't worry about the $60 price cap at all. The markets also don't appear to be concerned. The price of Brent oil actually dropped to $76.15 on December 8th, 3 days after the cap went into effect, marking it the lowest point of the year. If the cap's goal is to deny Russia the money it needs to maintain its military machine, then the price is incorrect. The Kremlin won't be under much pressure if the current price of Russian oil is simply locked in. This policy might not affect Russia's ability to wage war, as it obviously has loopholes. Eliminating loopholes is essential. The U.S. Treasury Department's guidance, for instance, protects U.S. maritime service providers from secondary sanctions in the event that one of their suppliers makes false claims of compliance with the price cap. This should be abandoned because it presents the Kremlin with a significant loophole. Service providers should not even be considered dealing with businesses with dubious reputations, according to Washington. Russia has made it clear that it has no plans to agree to the price cap. Russian President Vladimir Putin, Deputy Prime Minister and former Energy Minister Alexander Novak, Energy Minister Nikolai Shulganov, and the leaders of the Russian energy sector all insisted that Russia would not, as a matter of principle, sell its oil prices at below-market prices at the annual Russian Energy Week on October 12th and 13th. The companies are actively creating alternative supply chains that would ensure the EU and are ready to reduce production by up to 70% of the current levels if necessary. Russia criticized the plan and said that it would stop supplying nations with price caps. According to the International Energy Association, more than half of Russia's oil exports to Europe before the war. The Netherlands, Poland, and Germany were the top 3 importers. However, since the war, EU nations have been frantically working to reduce their reliance. And while the UK intends to phase out of Russian crude by the end of the year, the US has already banned it. Russia will undoubtedly feel the effects of the measures, but the blow will be somewhat lessened by its decision to sell its oil to other markets, like India and China, which are currently the 2 biggest consumers of Russian crude oil. Schedules for shipping and loading are typically created in the global oil industry 2 months prior to the month of loading. October is when the December cargoes are sold and their schedules are created. Thus, the price cap conflict will begin to develop in the coming weeks, and it is highly unlikely that Putin will give in to the pressure without a fight. As a result, there will certainly be chaos in the shipping and oil markets. Russia will require its own dedicated fleet, which will probably be made up of retired tankers because the ship owner would be at much lower risk. From 2023 to 2025, it is anticipated that 50 tankers will be scrapped, potentially creating an outclass fleet of Russian oil strikebreakers. Russia will require approximately 200 tankers to maintain its current rate, as its ports of Primorsk and Novorossiysk currently send out a tanker per day, with a round-trip time of 100 days to Asia. By the end of 2021, Russia's largest shipping company, Sovcomflot, had 51 tankers flagged in various jurisdictions. New Suezmax tankers costing $80 million, and their scrap value is $10 to $15 million. So 150 tankers will cost at least $1.5 to $2.5 billion, a hefty price, but one that Russia is likely to be able to afford. As it works to build up a larger fleet for its oil exports, Russia may also be able to rely on some of the assistance from Indian, Chinese, and Persian Gulf shipping companies to help with the shortage of ships. These nations are accustomed to dealing with Iranian oil, which is also subject to sanctions. However, Russian oil companies and their customers will aim to charter tankers from the market all at once. That would be a one-way ticket because the ship would then have to rely on a small number of non-European suppliers for any auxiliary services, probably at a higher cost. Due to its scarcity, such a ship would most likely be able to charge Russian cargo shippers more for its services for a while. However, that ship would become a trapped asset and would need to be shelved if at some point Russia admits defeat and begins to abide by the price cap. Whatever the strategy, building up a fleet will take some time. The available shipping capacity may reduce and limit Russia production from the interim, which is likely to cause some instability in the oil market. According to the report, due to the decline in shipment volumes and prices for Russian oil, the EU export ban and the G7 EU price cap are costing Russia $172 million per day. However, Moscow asserts that the price cap won't have any significant impact on its economy or its oil production. According to Russia's first deputy energy minister, Pavel Sorokin, the EU G7 price cap on the Russian crude won't cause a sharp decline in the country's oil output. According to Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, no one has yet observed instances of a price cap on Russian crude oil, and Russia has not yet observed the effects on the price cap mechanism. When questioned about a report released on Wednesday by the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, Putin's spokesman said that it was too soon to make judgments about the price cap's effects and that there was no evidence to support such conclusions. In fact, in response to a limit imposed by the group of 7 countries, Russia is considering establishing a price floor for its international oil sales. According to officials, Moscow is considering imposing a fixed price for the country's barrels or establishing maximum discounts to international benchmarks which they can be sold. There is currently no information available regarding the precise level. There is currently no information regarding what precise level that might be, and if it does, traders will be concerned about whether it will be conveniently above or below the cap level. The price cap would be crucial because businesses can only access industry standard insurance and other essential G7 services if they pay that $60 per barrel or less. Also prohibited from being used for above cap cargo purchases are the Greek oil tankers. By following a market-based strategy deal with the price cap, Russia hopes to provide buyers of its crude with a transparent pricing mechanism. Despite the EU and G7 ban, Russia has managed to hold its head high. But what does the future hold for Russia? Who is going to succeed, Russia or the world? Comment with your answers.